Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is May Mendoza of Enthusiasts. We are an organization here in Dubai where we focus creating events for Filipinos. It could be about finance or any personal development events. We would like to thank you for joining us this afternoon. It is, of course, a valuable time and we appreciate that very much. During these times, it has been challenging to most, if not all of us. This pandemic has affected our livelihood and also maybe our lifestyle. But amidst all of these, one great thing that has happened is skills have emerged and business potentials have also been developed. And while online selling, for example, has really proven that it has great potential because of the reach that it can make to a lot of people through social media channels, the risks are also there. While the rewards are great, the risks are also there. So how do we avoid these? What are the legal risks that we have to be aware of? These are what we will learn in this session today. And I will hand you over to Sonia Wei Muller, who is the key person as to why this event was made possible. She is a representative and also the lead person of TiE Hustle. Over to you, Sonia.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for joining us on your Friday afternoons. May gave an excellent kind of overview. Just to clarify, so TiE is an international entrepreneurial organization, probably one of the largest in the world with chapters all around the world. At TiE Dubai specifically, we have different initiatives around women, around supporting entrepreneurs in universities, etc. TiE Hustle is another vertical specifically focused on supporting the underserved entrepreneurial communities. Obviously, we've pivoted a little bit because of all that's happened in the last 4 or 5 months. Those of you who are attending, some of you may have lost your jobs. Some of you are maybe fearful of losing your jobs. And the rationale for putting this together was really to start tackling topics that are most relevant to you today. And a lot of you are probably most worried about how do you make your ends meet. And so we're trying to find topics that would help you kind of in your thinking and your journey about, all right, well, maybe social commerce is a way that I can start making money, or maybe I need to know how to present myself on LinkedIn in order to find another job, or maybe I need to look at freelance opportunities and what are the challenges and opportunities in that. So I really encourage you to ask questions. This is meant to be a dynamic session. Biancka and Edwin will obviously present their slides, but feel free to write in your questions in the Q&A. I would also ask that if you have topics in mind, this is not like Sonia says and we come up with the topics. All the topics that we're actually choosing to address have been crowdsourced from you guys, so from participants. So if there are topics that you think would be helpful to you as you explore different themes, or as you look to maybe jump ship towards something that's completely new, just drop those potential topics in the chat. And we'll make sure to include them. What we're good at is once you identify the topics that you're interested to hear about is actually finding the relevant speakers. So again, please feel free to be engaged and be honest. And there's no silly question here. This is really meant to be an open forum for everyone and for it to be as helpful as possible. So before we start and before I introduce Biancka, I think Cicely is gonna launch a quick poll just so we get a feel for who's in the audience. That'll be helpful to the panelists to kind of address questions and maybe target some of what they're saying specifically. So if you could please answer the survey that you're seeing pop up on your screen. All right, that was quick, Cicely. Hope most of you were able to answer that. All right, without further ado, Biancka, I will let you take the lead. Thank you so much for being with us again today.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Hi, everybody. Give me a minute whilst I share my screen and start my brief presentation. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Biancka. I'm co-founder of a UAE-based legal consultancy called Suits and Advisors. We focus on providing good, conscious legal advice that's primarily based on common sense and always in clear English that everybody can understand. And what sets us apart from traditional law firms is that we do not do any designer price tags. Our fees are always fixed. Also, as part of TiE Dubai, we focus on bringing good information out there to the entrepreneurial community so you can be informed and take decisions as and when you need to. Now, as a legal consultant, I always get asked the question, when do we come to a lawyer? Do we come before we have an idea, or do we come when we have a problem? And the common notion is that you always go to a lawyer when you have a problem. let me tell you, it's probably cheaper, maybe even free, to come and approach a lawyer before you actually start your venture or get yourself into any sort of trouble with the law. So there are some legal risks that I'm going to run through you before you launch or try to sell through social media in particular. I'm going to deal with 5 major risks. However, in the Q&A session, I'll be happy to address any other questions that you may come across whilst we're going through these top 5 legal risks. The first legal risk is find out the laws applicable to you. If you want to sell a product or a service through social media, the first question you need to ask yourself is, what laws may be applicable to me? What laws may be applicable to me selling this particular product? Do I need a particular licensing authority to approve this product before I actually sell it through social media? Do I need my service to be first approved by a regulatory authority? And find out all the possible applicable laws to you. You're going to ask me, how do I find out? Is there a common portal where I can access such laws? Yes, the Ministry of Justice has laws available on their portal, and sometimes some translation agencies also have laws available for sale. Secondly, get a commercial license. Don't just find out what laws are applicable to you. If you want to undertake any type of commercial activity in the United Arab Emirates, get a license that allows you to do so. Just remember, any sort of commercial activity in this country requires you to have a commercial license. The government has recently created a lot of initiatives for entrepreneurs who want to work on small scale businesses. So you do have affordable licensing options that my colleague Edwin is going to take you through after I finish my slides to you. Always make sure your business is operated in a professional and a regulated manner. The other risk that you should consider is setting up a bank account. This is a risk you want to avoid if at all the Federal Tax Authority wants to ever come and review your books of account. Always make sure all your accounts are recorded and maintained in a financial or accounting software. You've got adequate records. None of them are made up or none of them are missing. Everything should be accurate and recorded in a financial or an accounting software. One thing I want to point out here, since we're on the finance topic, is if you're thinking about getting into a collaboration or getting investment before you set up your business, what I would recommend is always have an agreement. Always make sure you have an agreement signed, or the partners that if you're an investor, make sure your name is on the license. An agreement or being on the license gives you that assurance that you have some kind of an equity stake or your interests are being recorded as an investor. And as a business owner, you want to be clear with your investors or your partners what exactly you're taking their money for, what their rights are, what their obligations are. So always make sure you record anything to do with investors or partners coming into your business. Record the money, basically. Clearly set out the terms of sale to your customers. If you're selling a product or a service, always make sure your consumers know exactly what they're buying. This helps set their expectations. You should not market, for example, something that looks like a Chanel dress, and when the consumer receives it, it's not a Chanel dress, it's just a dress with a big C on it. So always ensure that you're selling something that you accurately describe on your social media, so the social media users know exactly what they're going to expect when they receive that particular product in their mailbox. Or if you're selling a service, make sure you set out exactly what is included in the service and what is excluded in the service. Credibility. If you're trying to sell a product or a service, make sure you have tried and tested it. Make sure you're a reliable seller to begin with. Your terms of sale are clear, and the product or service that you're going to sell is not going to harm anybody. For example, do not engage in sale or trade of counterfeit products or fakes or products that are not legitimate or credible or authentic. This is just an example. Credibility goes a huge way, especially over social media. So these are the top 5 legal risks. I'd be happy to encourage you to share or ask any other questions at the end of it. I'm going to pass over to my colleague Edwin now, and these are my contact details and the contact details of our executive director at TiE Dubai in case you want to get in touch and ask any questions. Over to you, Edwin. Thank you.
Thank you, Bianca. Now, just while I'm setting up and sharing my screen, if we can launch again another poll to understand further our audience. Okay, let's start. And I'm going to discuss. My name is Edwin. I'm the managing director of a company called TiE Middle East Business Consultancy. We help individuals and companies to help them involving about their licenses. Services includes new registration, amendment, renewal, and cancellation. The same with employees visa, from new visa, renewal of visa, amendment to visa, and cancellation of the visa. Before that, we will be entertaining questions after these presentations. I'll be happy to answer all questions from the Q&A bar. And let's start. Today, we'd like to discuss about tips to consider before registering a license. And as we know, a lot of activities happening in social media selling different goods without valid licenses. And the consequences of selling it without valid license is really, it can be around 5,000 fines up to 500,000 fines, depend, and along with that is 3 months imprisonment, and depends on the grounds, depends on the decision of the authority. First, would like you to consider is to double check or triple check or probably go deeper when you see a lot of promotions in the web involving about license registration. Majority, you can see this cheap now, expensive later. I'm putting these words because majority of the offer, it's really cheap, but when it comes to, you can get cheaper at 7,000 to get the license, but when you're renewing it, it's 3 to 5 times expensive during renewal. And because you're excited, probably you didn't ask question what will be the annual cost of the license and what will be the consequences if you are not going to renew the license through them as accredited agent. It's really very important. Sometimes you do not have choice but to renew the license. Why? Because you build your brand, you have your pending transactions, you have a company bank account, and registering a new license with the same name, it's impossible in UAE. Next is 50% to 70% discount. The discount, it doesn't mean that because of they have higher discount, they are the cheapest in the market. Majority, it's some of them, they are true, yes, but again, it's still more expensive than the other options that we can provide you. And through checking other pre-zones. E-commerce versus trading activity. This is really very important to know. When you say e-commerce, you're acting as a third party connecting seller and buyer using their web portals. It doesn't mean that you're selling online. It's e-commerce. Okay. If you are selling products or goods from your company to your customer, it is trading activity and not e-commerce. I experienced this one for the last 4 months. A lot of clients coming back and saying that, you know, we're selling goods or bags, for example, or shirts or garments. Then they end up having e-commerce license, and then they cannot open bank account because their activity is basically a trading activity. When you have specific trading activity, for example, garments trading, then you can also do and sell it online. So be very careful.
Edwin, sorry, I'm just, it's Sonia. I'm just filtering some of the questions because this is related to what you're talking about right now, like e-commerce versus trading activity.
Yes.
Biancka and Ion are asking similar questions around if you're selling food online from your own kitchen, for example, you know, what kind of license do you need? I'm assuming you do need a license. And Ion's question specifically is, you know, if you're selling food maybe to friends, but you're using online social media kind of platforms to just create awareness around it, there's not necessarily a business plan attached to it. Are they liable to be sanctioned as well, even if the buyers are actually just friends?
It is. Actually, a majority of the, especially for Filipinos, they usually sell food products and they prepare it from their kitchen. the majority, if they have trading activity like food and beverages trading, they can sell the description of the activity. It's basically selling ready-made products, okay, to your consumer or customer. But preparing food is not part of it. It's a totally different activity where you need to get approval from food control department of Dubai municipality. It can be a restaurant, it can be a bakery, it can be or a bake shop, or it can be a cafeteria. Kitchen is really important when you're selling product and manufacturing product or preparing the product or the food, selling it to your customer. Food and beverages product, again, don't misunderstand it, that if you have food and beverages product, meaning you're selling ready-made products and you do not require kitchen. But if you're preparing the food, then it's not food and beverages trading activity. It should be something like restaurants, cafeteria, or a bakery. You need to have a kitchen approved by Dubai municipality based from their specifications.
So just to clarify, so if you are an individual who is basically home cooking and selling their food to whether it be friends or strangers, whatever, you then need a license specifically from Dubai municipality because it's coming out of your own kitchen. However, if you are selling kind of products that are maybe already packaged goods, then that counts as maybe an e-commerce license?
No. Again, I will repeat it, Sonia. The e-commerce activity description is acting as a third party. They are using your portal, okay, to connect the seller and the buyer, selling their products, okay? And usually some authorities, they require a safe payment gateway accredited by the government or endorsed by the government just to make sure that we're protecting the consumer. That's one. But again, going back to the kitchen issue, if your food and beverages product, again, the trading product, ready-made products, okay, and selling the products from manufacturer, okay, to your consumer or customer. But if you're preparing food, the Dubai municipality, they doesn't approve establishment, or if you prepare food or your kitchen from your home, it should be from the establishment, separate establishment, meaning it can be again activity like restaurants, cafeteria, or bakery. But if you're preparing it, you have license, you will not get license anyway for cafeteria or restaurants, not unless you have a separate establishment where they can see that you're preparing the food according to the specifications that they are provided. And inspection is happening regularly just to make sure that we're protecting the consumer.
All right, got it.
Okay, now to continue with that, the other one is set up your business and get lifetime visa. Probably some of you heard this one. The number one condition here is you should have active company who will sponsor your visa. And while the company is active, the visa is also active, but it doesn't mean that the visa is lifetime. Okay, it's how they just prepare or market it in the social media. It is valid for 3 years and renewable. If your license is active on the 3rd year, then they will renew your visa free of cost. But again, you need to do exactly the same procedures. If you total the cost for 3 years, if you register your license separately and pay for the visa separately, your expenses for 3 years is more or less around 10K cheaper, 10,000 dirhams cheaper against the yearly package of the company who offers it. Savings will vary depending on the offer of the consultant. And last but not the least is the terms and conditions apply. Usually cheap, but for only specific activity. You can get like 7,000 dirham license, but the activity available for this is only specific. Meaning if you have different activity, you will not be able to avail the 7,000 dirhams license they are offering. So again, my recommendations, be very careful with the promotions. Make sure that everything is documented, not just verbally discussed, just to make sure that you can go back to them just in case of dispute. And that's all that's from me as of the moment, and this is my contact number. And back to you.
Edwin, we have a couple of questions in the chat if you want to have a look in the Q&A. one of the questions is around one of the attendees who's saying that he or she are planning to make handmade stuff, so crocheted home decor, clothing, etc. And so she's not sure, he or she is not sure if they'll be able to cover their cost of license and the material used. Can they register and sell through Etsy, for example, which is an international website, or do they need to have a license in the UAE as well?
If you're operating in UAE, then you need to have license in UAE. That's very direct and specific. If you are trading or selling specific product that you're like garments, for example, or art, like paintings, for example, then you need to have a specific trading activity in your commercial license before you can sell it. And again, for example, if you cannot accommodate the cost of your license as of the moment, then there are a lot of other ways. One of the other ways is to collaborate with your friends or individuals who does exactly the same, and then share with the license cost just to be legal selling your products online, or even not online if you have trading activity.
And can you give an idea, given the current times? I mean, I know there's been quite a few changes for various licensing costs. What have you seen happen over the last couple of months in terms of maybe the government trying to subsidize part of the costs or not? Like, where are we at in terms of actual costing for some of these licenses?
Each authority have different promotions, and some of them they end up at last end of June. Some of them they extend it, some of them they revise it. Each authority they have different promotions. It can be discount, it can be payment terms, flexible payment terms, and a lot of things. Some of them they waive the flexi-desk rental for the new start company just to save some money. That's how they do it. Again, we have 52 free zones in UAE as of the moment.
52 what?
Free zones in UAE. 52 active free zones. And we're talking about probably 70% is coming from Dubai. 60 to 70% is from Dubai.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, so looking at some of the other, there's about 7 questions or 6 questions in here. Does the e-trade license cover the making of physical goods like handmade artwork and decor?
See, for that type of products, you don't need an it can be a virtual office, it can be a flexi desk, and then you can trade this product you can prepare this product from your side without getting any external approval. That's the good thing with that product, meaning you can sell it, but again, it's through commercial license, through trading license, depends on your prepared prison authority where you want to register your license.
Okay. And another interesting question is, if you're selling through Amazon, for example, do you need a license?
Again, if you're selling through Amazon, it's as far as I know, the requirements of the Amazon is also to have a license, to be accredited by Amazon. Because again, they are trying to protect as much as possible the consumer.
Okay. Okay, sorry. So Hilarion, just to answer your question, this is UAE specific, so not for your beautiful home country of Uganda. I don't think Edwin and Biancka know about the Ugandan laws. So yeah, so just for everyone's clarity, this is very much UAE focused. So this is what we're focused on today. Another anonymous attendee, if I get a license for a training center from a free zone, do I need another license for more activities? I think this is a question that's going to come up quite a bit. And there is some level of confusion even when I set up my own business in terms of, you know, it's not a one license fits all, unfortunately, type of thing. So depending on what you're undertaking, you might need a couple of licenses. And then I guess that's also how the government makes their money in terms of kind of layering the different licenses that you might need. Right?
That's correct. That's correct. Actually, when you say training, be very careful. When you say, if your activity includes the word training or education, for example, then it requires approval or external approval from the KHTA of Dubai or in UAE, wherever you are going to register your license. It is a mandatory requirement.
Okay. Ion is asking, can you give an idea roughly of how much is the lowest rate for a license for food with kitchen or restaurant? So what, can you give like a ballpark figure or of what the pricing would be for that license?
If we're talking about A to Z license and we're talking about mainland, because again, if you're registering your license in prison, then you need to have establishment within that prison. Okay. If we're talking about DED or the mainland license, then you need to have establishment within mainland. Involving about the cost, excluding the establishment cost, more or less it will cost you between 10 to 15,000 from trade name reservation, initial approval, from your memorandum of associations, the notarization that includes also your license fee, and the establishment card or immigration card of the company so that you can sponsor visa, and labor card, company labor card. So more or less it's between 10 to 15,000 dirhams depending on the activity. And again, if your establishment is more expensive, and then bear in mind that 5% of that of annual rental is included in your license fee as market.
So sorry, so presumably at least from my, again, experience, is that the hefty cost is kind of at the beginning, right? But then there's like, because you have to do your articles of association, etc. But then there's like, you have to renew this also every year, right? But it's not necessarily going to be that full 10,000 that you might have paid initially. It might be like 8,000. It's still expensive, but it might be like maybe 70 to 80% of the cost as opposed to 100% of the cost every year, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Yes.
Okay. What do I need to set up an IT training business specifically? Sorry, we're going to specifics here.
Okay. When we say IT training, again, the word training, it is really required approval from the KHDA because you're issuing certificate, and they make sure that the qualifications of the training center is there. And the requirement, of course, is basically experience in that industry. And along with that, it's probably around 8 or 10 more different requirements to register, and you need to have an actual establishment where you will do your training.
Okay, so he's saying, to be more specific, this is with regards to registration, which you just talked about, and dealing with the red tape. Well, my dear Alex, I think the red tape will always be there regardless of the license that you look for. I think the premise here is just to make sure that you have, an Edwin or a Biancka to speak with, to make sure that you're actually going by the book. And from what I've seen, at least, especially in the last couple of months, is the rules and the regulations keep changing as well. So making sure that you're looking at the latest information available. All right, Matthew's asking about online trading. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, Matthew, so if you can please clarify in the Q&A while I move on to another question. Sally's asking, she's an upcoming entrepreneur for an online marketing firm here in the UAE. What kind of license? Well, she's asking, would she need a license? And if so, which license would she need for online marketing?
For marketing, there are 2 types of license anyway. As of the moment, we have options. Let's discuss also the other options. The other options is freelancing. If you're providing services, usually in freelance licenses, it is available and it's more cheaper. And it's currently it's around 7,000 dirhams to have freelance license in one of the prisons in UAE. And if you are doing marketing consultancy, for example, rather than and budget-wise, it's you prepared cheaper options, then you can get a freelance license, or you can have an actual company where you can probably through prisons also. You can the cheapest as of the moment is around 14,100 dirhams without visa. If you need visa, then approximately around almost 17,000 dirhams, and it's in Dubai prisons. Dubai prison. And compare this prison to other prisons outside Dubai, to be specific, it's very competitive price, and sometimes it's more cheap.
Got it. Matthew clarified his question. Thank you, Matthew. He's saying like you had with regards to the previous question around the training platform. he understands what you said if there's a physical space attached to it, but what if it's an online trading platform and not a physical training setup? What's the procedure and what are the charges?
For online training, you can do online training, yeah, but again, HDA requires establishment. And even they are online right now because of what's happening as of the moment. Definitely they have establishment before they get the approval or from the KHDA. If you're going to do online again, the major requirements to get approval from KHDA for training company or institute, for example, then the qualifications, aside from your attested qualifications according to the type of industry, for example, like IT, you should have at least minimum 5 years experience, for example, within UAE doing IT training. So it's specific, and not only with that, it's few levels of approval from the KHDA. It's not just one go, but now it's more better than before. So if you want to get that one, then make sure either you still have establishment for the approval. For online, I don't think as of the moment, I'm not sure if they are allowing or giving license without establishment. I can verify it for you later. Yeah.
One more question from Shakar, who's asking, a few months ago, the government announced the virtual company license. Do you have any details on this, and can you shed some light?
Virtual company license. When you say virtual, again, it depends on really how you interpret the news. Sometimes we read only few paragraphs from the news, but again, in actual, it's totally different. That's why we again recommend to go to consultants or probably inquire it straight away from the authority. Some of the for example, they are issuing a cheaper license for a specific activity, and they just released news involving about this one. Like for example, you can get license at 1,600 dirhams, but it's only depends on the activity and depends on the qualifications that you have, and it's very limited. So if you have further questions about the virtual, I can answer specifically if you are mentioning through DED or through a pre-zone authority who's offering these options for virtual licenses. When we say virtual licenses, you don't have actual office. It can be inside business center provided by the authority, and your license is gets more cheaper because it's through business center.
Okay, I want to ask a question that I think people are probably too scared to ask in a public forum. But, you know, all this is great. And I think what was interesting from the second poll that we had launched was that 75% of the participants either do not have a license or did not know that they needed a license for what they're doing. So what does happen? I mean, let's be open and like what does happen if you're caught? Like, how are you actually caught? Like, what is the system in terms of catching people to see whether or not they have their licenses? Like, who actually does that? You know, maybe you have some anecdotes that you can share. Because, you know, I mean, we hear about these things. You need this license, you need that license. But, you know, what is the worst case scenario?
Biancka, would you like to answer that?
Aside from the fines, like, how would they find out, I guess, is my question. And who are they?
Biancka, go on.
You've put us both in the spot.
Sorry, but I mean, it is a question. It's like, you know, we keep on saying you have to get this license, that license, or else. But what is that or else? And who is that actually enforced by?
So we'll try and answer this in a way that's the most politically correct and appeals to everybody without treading on any toes. So the key to remember throughout all what Edwin and I have been saying is be licensed, get a license. Now, what happens, as Sonia says, if you don't get a license? Here's the risk. You sell a product, somebody gets adversely affected by that product, and say they get a skin rash with the skin cream that you've sold to them. They go and they complain to UAE Consumer Protection. UAE Consumer Protection runs an investigation. And then they inform the authority in the particular emirate where that product has been sold. The authority runs an investigation and then you get fined. The fines are about 50,000 dirhams, but they could be higher if somebody has died or somebody has ended up in the hospital. And then that goes into criminal with intent to harm. So it really depends what kind of harm has been caused. If it's just a simple breach of a license, you'll get a really hefty fine. Say, for example, I know of, speaking of anecdotes, Sonia, I know of somebody who was licensed in the free zone, a yoga instructor, and then she went into one of the parks in Dubai and she tried to, have a yoga session there, a yoga group session. And the municipality authorities were just happened to be passing by, taking a stroll in the park, if you will. And they asked what was happening there. And the group members responded that they were having a yoga session. So they asked for the license of the instructor. And the instructor was licensed in another free zone emirate and did not have a mainland license. So the instructor was immediately fined 50,000 dirhams.
Wow. Okay. That's a pretty powerful anecdote.
This is a bigger client that I had, where they went and they thought that the DMCC in Dubai was the cheapest to incorporate for their kind of license that they were looking for. So they directly went to the authority and got themselves licensed, spent about 500,000 dirhams on fancy offices, getting licensed, etc. And then they came to me for drafting legal documents. And I asked to see their structure. When I saw the structure, the first thing I said to them is, that's not the right place to be incorporated. You need to be incorporated either in ADGM or DIFC, because what you're doing is a financially regulated activity. So it is key, because a free zone is offering a cheaper license, like Edwin said in point number 1, cheap is not always good. In my client's case, they had to dissolve the entire structure. They lost 500,000 and then they had to spend more money relicensing. So it's key to go to an advisor and ask what is the right license to get, as opposed to what is the cheapest.
I guess I'm going to go through some of the questions as well. Again, here we have quite a few. So again, this is very specific, but I guess it may be in line with what you were saying about the yoga instructor. If you have a DED e-trader license as a life coach, and you will be running online coaching set 1 and possibly 2, is this allowed in the scope of the license, or does it count as training and needs KDHA approval?
See, coach usually doesn't require any external approval if we're talking about just coaching. And it so happened that if you are having e-trader or e-trading license, again, it's totally different then it's totally different to your actual activity. Then again, just what Biancka mentioned, even some few inquiries last week that I had, is they registered company, they said e-commerce, they insist e-commerce, but it's not e-commerce, it's a trading activity. So it's you just wasted your money for registering a license that is not literally valid to what you do, So now if you're e-trader and then it says there in e-trader, this is the cheapest license that I'm talking about, Sonia, provided by DED. It's limited. If it says e-trader, then again, that's why trader, meaning you're trading, you're not servicing, you're not providing service. So it's totally different. Again, you need to be very careful when you're registering a license. Make sure that the activity mentioned is the activity that you want to do, the type of operations that you want. It's not just to have license. Having license with different activity and then you do different activity, it's useless. It's a waste of money. So be very careful with that. So it's totally different activity. I
suspect what tends to happen, sorry, again, being my usually blunt self and saying what people are probably thinking, is that people probably just get one license. And even if they venture into something else that would require another license, they probably just kind of wait it out, right? Until they get a little tap on the wrist where it's like, hey, you're now doing this other stuff as well. You need to get a new license, right? I'm assuming that's typically what happens. And again, I'm assuming, I know we're being dramatic with like the 50,000 dirham kind of anecdote with the yoga teacher, but presumably if that in a scenario like this, where let's say I set up a business and I register for one license, then I add something to my business and I kind of don't get the second license that I might need for that, presumably the authorities would first tap me on the wrist before fining me, right? They give you at least one chance, I'm assuming, right? To kind of redeem yourself.
No, I can say no.
Again, wow. Okay.
I can say no. And again, they are very active with this, and you'll never know. if your previous question, I really asked Bianca to answer the question because there's a lot of ways to find out that if you're doing illegal or if you're doing activities without active license. Number one, your phone number mentioned in social media, for example, it is registered to you and they have system to find it out. So it's easy. And if they caught you, then again, it's 50,000. It can be more higher. Depends on the ground.
And presumably for something like social commerce, which is what we're talking about right now, I mean, that is extremely visible as well, right? So obviously if you're selling stuff on Facebook or social media, I'm sure that the government probably has a specific social media commerce team that just scouts kind of everything that's being sold maybe in the UAE and is like, like we need to check, you know, all of these and make sure that they have the required licenses.
Yeah, it's possible. It's one way for them to find it out, actually. There's a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways that I cannot really discuss.
Okay.
From my experience.
Okay. I won't push you. I'll go back to the questions and be more diplomatic.
I can add to that, Sonia. One very common way is if a competitor complains about you or a client complains about you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You're definitely going to be investigated.
Yeah, all right. You can't count on other human beings kind of being nice. They'll call you out, I guess. All right, Alex has another question. Can you shed some light on subcontractor licensing specifically? This is with regards to the IT industry. So subcontractors.
Bianca?
I guess what kind of licensing do subcontractors need specifically within the IT industry? Is there a subcontractor license?
There isn't a subcontractor license. They'd have to fall under the regular activities of the IT industry, whether it's consulting, actual technicians. They'd have to look at the activities and whether mainland or free zone and select it. There's nothing called subcontracting that I've come across.
That's correct. It's basically an agreement between two companies. So it's not actually.
I guess if you're hiring a subcontractor, then you as I guess the demand side need to make sure that that subcontractor has the adequate license. Right? I mean, that might be what the question is. So it's really like, I guess in terms of KYC or compliance, if you're going to hire a subcontractor as a company, like you need to do your diligence in terms of making sure that they have their ducks in a row in terms of licensing.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But there's no repository, right? So like if you are looking to do business either with another business or a subcontractor, there's no like kind of repository where you can go check. So for example, if my company wants to subcontract a company, there's no website I can go to just to check that this is a legit company and that they have the license and everything, right? I would need to ask that company to send me a copy of their license. That's how most people do it, I'm assuming.
That's the most common way of doing it. There is no public record system here, like back in like in the UK, for example. Another way of doing it is if a main contractor wants to actually check who the subcontractor is, they can ask the subcontractor to produce a letter from the Etihad Credit Bureau. It's a national credit rating agency, and a letter from them costs about 200 dirhams. You can apply for it online, and when you get it, you get a whole credit history of that particular company, and that basically goes to show that the company is in good financial standing for how long, etc. So that's a quick, easy fix, I'd say, as opposed to running a full legal or technical or financial due diligence.
Okay, interesting. I had no idea about that. That's very interesting. One other question was that if you're based, I think this is Sabira, who's saying she's interested in opening an e-commerce store. Obviously, Dubai has competitive free zone packages, as we discussed, but she resides in Abu Dhabi. Will her address still be applicable for Dubai license? So how does it work if you're like an entrepreneur based in Abu Dhabi? Can you still make use of some of these free zone packages in Dubai, for example? Or how, like, you know, is there crossover or is there fragmentation, I guess, within the UAE even in general?
License-wise, they can register, definitely, even you are residing in different Emirates. The next question is how you operate it. And I'll be honest with you. Let's, again, if you have, for example, DED license, okay, Dubai license, mainland license, this is the legal way. This is the technically, if you have DED license, you are only allowed to do activity within mainland of Dubai. Mm-hmm. Okay? if you're doing business basically outside Dubai, like Sharjah, for example, or Abu Dhabi, you have transactions, and then you need to have license in Abu Dhabi also. Separate license. It can be a branch or it can be a new entity. Okay. So, but as of the moment, we see licenses cross-selling everywhere. Okay. And Biancka can answer, or I'd probably partner about that in scenario. But that's, as of the moment, nobody's giving fines or doing that. No, but I don't know. The government have the department who does checking, involving about each company if they are doing or if they are doing only their activity or transactions within the covered area, like mainland, for example, of Dubai only, and not crossing out any other Emirates.
All right. Okay, that's interesting. We're approaching the end of the session, guys. So if you have last remaining questions, I know these are very detailed questions on people's specific situations, but I definitely learned some stuff that I didn't know. One more question from Sanya. So he or she makes films. They're often co-produced by larger distribution channels. Their offices are in India. Their payments come into India, and their grants, sales, etc. are also in India. But he or she lives between India and with their family in Dubai. Do they need a license over here? So, okay, I'm not going to pretend that I know how to answer this question. I have a potential answer, but I'll let you answer.
Okay, if they're doing the activity in Dubai, then they should have. That's very simple. It's not about where you reside. It's where you do the activity.
But I think what he's saying here is that all the activities seem to be in India in terms of the offices, the payments, etc. is all done up in India. But he, I guess, chooses to live between India and his family is in Dubai. So if the business activities are in another country, presumably that would have been my initial, I guess, answer would have been, well, you don't need a license for that since you're not operating anything other than living here. But I guess my question then to Sanya would be, well, what's your visa then in Dubai in order for you to stay here? You must have some sort of entity set up in Dubai in order to get your residency here. So what is that entity? Is that just a virtual office? You might not want to answer this on a public outlet. So I don't want to call you out necessarily, but I'm assuming if his business is all in India, he doesn't need a license for that specific business in the UAE, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. She's on a housewife. Okay, you're on a house. Wow, you're being very transparent. Thank you, Sanya, for being so open. Okay, so you're on a housewife visa here. Oh, my husband has his business. Okay. It is a her. Sorry. Yes, the name is Sanya. Sorry, Sanya, about that. All right, got it. Well, I hope that answered your questions. What we're saying is that for your husband's business, if it's in India, and he has no kind of income coming into the UAE and has no presence in the UAE, then he doesn't need, it doesn't sound like he needs a license here. All right. Any other questions, folks? Anything that you want to clarify? I had a question actually, just to maybe finish the session. Sorry, very hot. What is the future of licensing? Like, how are you seeing, obviously there's a lot of change happening right now because of the current situation, but what are some things that you may be anticipating? Can you give us a little sneak peek into your, into your little magic ball maybe of what you might see, what maybe will you see coming kind of in the next year or two?
Okay, right now it's happening already, but not all free zones. Right now it's happening that before it's a requirement for a shareholder to come to the authority to sign in front of them to witness the signature to verify the original passport and other documents. But now all online, it's acceptable as long as it's recorded through Zoom meeting also, as long as it's recorded. So meaning even they are outside UAE, they can set up their licenses in UAE if they want to register a license. Other than that, I'm looking forward for more development anyway online and more easier process when it comes to setting up company. Biancka?
I'll tell you one thing that I'd like to see. I'd like to see an online portal where me as an entrepreneur, I can just go on there, put in my activity that I want to do, and a list of options, activities available with their pros and cons just pops up on my site. and I can just pick and choose from there, register the license, print it from my home printer, and also apply for a bank account at the same time. That would be the future, I think. That would be my ideal future as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely going to be stuff done on the digitization KYC front, and then in terms of kind of smart Dubai, seamless kind of integration. I think we'll probably see that coming. I'm doing a total shameless plug-in, guys, all of you who are listening. I run an investment company. We invest in startups, tech startups specifically, and we partnered with Latham, which is an international law firm. And we created a website called thefreezonenavigator.com. I wrote it out in the chat. So for those of you who do have tech-enabled businesses, it's a free tool whereby you can just go on there, and we organized it by sector. So if you're e-commerce versus robotics versus logistics, etc., and you can basically see where are the best free zones that you can set up in, and then you can compare the pricing, etc. So you can feel free to check it out. Again, it's free. Honestly, it just came about because it was such a headache when I looked to set up my own company, and I had this Excel sheet, and then I kept on getting people who were like, "Can you share that Excel sheet?" Because my Excel sheet compared, RAC versus Fujairah versus DMCC, etc. And there is kind of, obviously when you're looking to set up a business, it's like you want to get kind of bang for your buck and make sure that you're setting up in the right location from the services that you're offering, but also be as cost effective as you can. And so what I found was that I had this, like, my Excel sheet was just circulating amongst my friends who were looking to set up their own businesses. So we basically decided to do this professionally and partner with Latham and actually create a website that is regularly updated with each of the free zone information. So you can check it out. I'm just sorry, some people are writing in the chat as well. Oh my gosh, you guys, you're overwhelming me. There's Q&A and chat. Will you receive a recording? Yes, the recording will be on our TiE Dubai YouTube channel. I think Cicely will reconfirm that. Okay, some of these other ones. I suggest maybe what we can do is, Biancka, maybe just put your credentials again on the screen. Guys, if you're interested in reaching, and then Edwin, please do the same. And then maybe you guys just take a picture with your phones in case you want to reach out to Edwin or Biancka. Biancka, do you want to start maybe first and just put your contact info, and then Edwin can put his? Okay. Wonderful. That great idea. Biancka put hers in the chat. She very graciously put her cell phone number even. So get ready for a bunch of WhatsApps, Biancka. Edwin's going to write in his as well. There we go. He is not putting his cell phone number, so you cannot. Oh, he did. Okay. Very transparent. Thank you guys for being so open and accessible. So now you have Biancka and Edwin's contact info on the side. Feel free to reach out to them. I know there are a couple more questions, but really these are very specific. So I would suggest you just reach out to either of them to get them answered. I'm just making sure that I haven't missed anything. All right. So I hope this was helpful. I do have one last ask before you guys log off and continue on your weekends. This is for the audience. The details are not visible. Okay, sorry, let me do it because they put it in panelists, not the attendees. Sorry guys, can you retype and make sure that in the chat it says all panelists and attendees? Right now you just sent it to the panelists. All right, they're doing that. While they're doing that, for those who are attending, what would be really useful would be, again, for you guys to just tell us what you want to hear about. So just so that we know, we're trying to do this every 2 weeks. So if you can let us know a couple of topics that you would like to see addressed, and we'll make sure to pick the appropriate speaker and organize that. So feel free to email TiE or write it in the chat. That would be useful. The first 3 topics that we've done, including this one, have been the ones that have been suggested by you guys. So yeah, dealing with bank account opening for new, good luck with that. I think that's a topic. That is a topic that a lot of us, Is there anything you want to say at a high level, Biancka and Edwin, or are you just going to nod and in agreement like I am?
I was just going to say good luck.
Actually,
All
I
right.
supposed to mention it also during the discussion about the licenses. The challenge really of a new company in UAE, especially having Plexidus or virtual office, really bank account opening. It depends on your, again, your background also, your relationship with bank or existing bank that you have. But again, we can try to endorse you and help you with the different banks from my side if required when you are opening the bank company or bank account company. And I can even suggest later on with Sonia, I can suggest one guy who can help them just in case that this topic will be brought up later on with TiE Dubai.
Yeah, I think this is actually a great topic because that's one that comes up all the time with the entrepreneurs, obviously that I deal with as well in terms of the frustrations around not being able to open bank accounts because of size of business, etc. I think that's very gracious of you, Edwin. Edwin has pretty much said that if you are kind of an entrepreneur looking to open up a business bank account, that you can reach out to him and he can help you with that. So that's very nice of you. Thank you, Edwin. All right. I think you are welcome, Parisa, and thank you everyone for joining. I hope you have a beautiful rest of the weekend and look forward to catching you all. Thank you again, Edwin and Biancka, for your time on a weekend. And thank you and here's another poll, one last poll. Please answer. That helps us also understand if today was helpful or not. And yeah, please share the love, guys. This is meant to be, free sessions really to help you all on your journeys. So just, get the word out. The more the merrier. There's no cap in terms of the number of participants on this Zoom account. So if this was helpful to you, feel free to tell other people about TiE Hustle so that they can check out some of the future sessions that we're doing. You're very welcome, Alex. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day and keep in touch. Thank you again, Edwin and Biancka.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Bye.